Hey, Jackman! Listen, guys, don't make this tacky. Nobody call him Wolverine.
Oh, man, you're just Wolverining right now. You feel that?
I think so. Does Wolverining hurt a little?
Every time.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Rick and Morty Season 7 Episode 1 video. There were a whole bunch of Easter eggs, references, celebrity cameos like Hugh Jackman with a whole bunch of Wolverine jokes, so we'll break it all down. I know there's also a bunch of questions about what happened with Justin Roiland being fired by the show and the new voice actors for Rick and Morty. It is definitely the elephant in the room, but I feel like they actually did probably about as good a job as finding sound-alikes as they possibly could, so I will address that in a second. It is going to be a little bit weird watching the show for a while. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. There's actually a bunch of banger animated shows coming up later this year, like Invincible Season 2 is happening. I'll be doing episode videos for that as well. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet, but just starting with that elephant in the room, the new voice actors playing Rick and Morty are Ian Cardone, who's playing Rick, and all the other Rick-related characters like the Ricks from different universes like Rick Prime. Harry Belden is the new voice actor playing Morty in all the other Mortys, and some of the characters that Justin also voiced. Like, Justin voiced a lot of different characters on the show, so they might divide some of those other characters between these two new voice actors.
I can synthesize coffee. You don't need to make excuses to
Yeah,
come
I
see
need to
me.
say that, so I didn't even bring a cup.
I will say, just after watching this first episode, I haven't seen any of the other episodes yet, but the Morty voice actor sounds exactly like Morty. He even kind of looks like a grown-up version of Morty, not to make fun of him or anything like that. This actually looks like a real-life version of Morty. The voice actor for Rick doesn't sound exactly like Rick, like it's a little bit different. You can pick up on it if you've been watching the show since Season 1 really carefully, but if you've only been loosely watching the show, you might not notice it that much. Generally, it didn't bother me. I feel like they did a pretty decent job given everything that's happened. I'm not going to speak too much on the Justin Roiland of it all. That all kind of going down in the background for the most part. Dan Harmon also did a much bigger interview addressing all that stuff and basically confirmed what a lot of the reports were saying, what happened behind the scenes at Rick and Morty and the drama between him and Justin after Season 2. Dan Harmon basically confirmed that Justin had not been involved with the show creatively since after Season 2. Like, he basically checked out and would just come in and do the voiceover roles. So generally, starting with Season 3, the show has completely been Dan Harmon's creative vision. And even though they don't reference it in this episode, there is a Rick and Morty movie that they're also working on. I don't know when it's going to happen, but Dan Harmon also said that Zack Snyder called him into his office at Warner Brothers to see if he could try to help him get the Rick and Morty movie made, because apparently Zack Snyder is a Rick and Morty fanboy. Dan Harmon basically explained that a Rick and Morty movie would be just like South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, like a completely separate standalone adventure, maybe loosely referencing some canonical stuff. But the actual episode title, Episode 1, was called How Poopy Got His Poop Back, which is a reference to the movie How Stella Got Her Groove Back, and Rick helping PB clean up his life as he's basically hitting rock bottom again. During the episode, they also reference all the events of his past, which are basically the events of all the different post-credit scenes from different seasons. Like, sometimes he's up, sometimes he's down, and this time he is very down. The last time we saw him, Rick got him fired from his professor job, and that's what got him off the wagon again in this downward spiral where you find him here in their living room. That's basically what the cold open is, like finding him in their living room where he's been living for a while now. Space Beth is hanging out with the family again. It seems like she's been with them on the regular for a couple seasons now. She's probably still in that weird relationship with Beth. It's not anything that Rick or the other characters haven't gotten up to, so like it's normal for the Rick and Morty universe, and the whole idea is that she's cut from the same cloth as Rick. Like, she's meant to be just like Rick. So anything that Rick has done, Beth is also probably either going to do or has done already. The other funny thing too is that since all the Space Beth and Beth relation stuff has been happening, that's basically what they're doing on the Loki series in the Marvel Universe, like Loki trying to get busy with another version of himself from another universe. Jerry's still using a TiVo. If you're too young to remember what TiVo is, it's basically a special DVR that people use to record broadcast TV shows before the age of streaming became a thing. In his defense, Jerry acknowledges that it is an antique. Let me know in the comments if you still have a TiVo inside your house somewhere, even if you don't use it. PB's dealer also tries to sell Rick and Morty some Ritalin. That's why she asks if they have trouble focusing. And the whole idea here is that they're mad at Rick because he's been putting off having an intervention for Poopy Butthole. The episode is all about getting over your own demons, dealing with your past, and the irony is Rick has all those problems. He can't get over his past, and he's also just as lousy a drunk as PB is, pretty much all their friend group is. Zoom and enhance around the living room, there's a Custody Law for Dummies book because he lost his son when his wife left him and he fell off the wagon. The bathrobe he's wearing seems like it belongs to Morty because it has the M on it and they're about the same size. Then he asks Beth's help hanging himself and it makes fun of her for being too poor or too lazy to actually get a fan. breaks the fourth wall again. He's one of the few characters like Rick who break the fourth wall all the time. He even breaks the fifth wall later in the episode. Then when he's recapping the events of all of his post-credit scenes and all the bad things that have happened to him, he recounts Beth shooting him, which she's still traumatized by. And apparently since the last time we saw him, he's tried and failed to pass the bar exam. That's the exam in the United States that you try to pass to become a lawyer. There's an entire cabinet of booze under the TV. I think that's meant to belong to Beth or Rick, or maybe both of them, because they're like the only two people in the family that are lousy drunks. There are a whole bunch of new intro scenes. Summer picking Rick up, being super strong. She's not quite as swole as when they were back in season 2. She's also got some wrist device on her, which is probably how she got super big. Rick and Morty digging graves, fighting off zombies. Beth and Space Beth dancing in some kind of king's court, all dressed up in candy and sweets-themed attire. Look back there, Morty and Summer seem like they're having a good time. For whatever reason, Space Beth is pissed. Housewife Beth is afraid like their lives are on the line or something. Rick and Morty skiing down a slope, escaping from people James Bond style, but their heads are huge and they're skiing or snowboarding on their tongues. Then Jerry doing a big parody of Jean-Claude Van Damme with the splits here. Let me know in the comments which of these intro scenes you think are real and which are fake. The other joke too is that the fake intro scenes, like the ones that don't wind up in actual episodes, might wind up in like distant future episodes, so like they haven't happened yet, so technically they could all be real. The other big change to the intro here that you probably noticed is that Dan and Justin's names got taken out of the opening title, like their creator credits, for obvious reasons. They kept their ones at the end, so like Justin Roiland's name is at the end of the episode, so he's still getting paid his creator credit on the show, like he's just not earning extra money that he would have gotten for being a voice actor or writing on the show. Then Morty finds Rick downstairs in his secret sub-basement that we learned about last season, looking for Rick Prime. They make a bunch of jokes about him finding and killing him, but he's being sarcastic. I don't know if this will wind up being true. You can let me know in the comments. Sometimes they'll do that where like Rick will joke about something in a sarcastic way, but it'll be the show saying, oh yeah, no, he actually did that. He was telling the truth. He just sounded sarcastic.
Rick and Morty Season 7, hunting my nemesis. Not every episode, Morty. It could be all happening in the background. Who knows? You know, no one will except us.
They made a really big deal about a bunch of Rick Prime stuff happening this season, so they could actually just be blowing past that. The show does that all the time where they'll be like, oh yeah, this canonical thing, yeah, we're never ever going to reference that ever again. The monitor he's looking at though shows a copy of the former central finite curve. Evil Morty essentially destroyed that. This is little Rick's ability to control it, but I think he's just trying to track Rick Prime's movements, so I think that implies that Rick Prime is still alive. When he says he knows how to make someone leave, that's just a reference to him being insufferable and driving people away. Then apparently Rick knows how to create ghosts, and they confirm that ghosts do exist in the Rick and Morty universe. Then Rick makes a bunch of jokes about referencing the logic behind the ghosts, like, okay, we need to unpack all this logic here. There's a bunch of science to be explored in the reality of ghosts. They do that same kind of joke at the end of the episode where he fades out and then tries to explain the logic behind actually being able to fade out like it's an actual pill that you take. That's also a bit of a meta joke about shows over-explaining their jokes. The way they explain him creating the ghost, though, in this moment is that he injects it with a bunch of unfinished business, and if you watch a lot of ghost movies or ghost TV shows, one of the tropes of ghosts is the reason why you're supposed to become a ghost and not go to heaven or hell is because you have unfinished business on the planet. And apparently he injects some daddy issues into this ghost. Those are his unresolved issues. The other thing this kind of soft confirms too is that robots, or the robot that Rick created, has a soul so that it can become a ghost, because that's one of the other big twists, like you have to have a soul in order to become a ghost. Robots having souls is also a big question of a lot of sci-fi movies too, like do robots have souls or can they get souls? Rick makes a joke about interventions only being 10% effective, then tries to explain a way that he's not having intervention even though he describes having an intervention. They imply Summer currently has no friends, which would only be true if she's not friends with Trisha Lange or Nancy anymore. Maybe they stopped being friends after Trisha told her she wanted to bang Jerry a couple seasons ago. That would definitely make things awkward between the two of them. Then Rick basically brings back some of the biggest characters on the show that everybody had been asking to come back for a long time now. First he goes to Gearhead, who has a salacious gear-themed poster on the wall. He's kind of a punching bag on the show, just in the general theme of things. They finally bring back the Squanchy character for real this time. Everybody's been wondering since season 2 when they're actually going to bring him back. They've referenced him in a couple previous seasons, like there was an alternate possible future that Rick saw where he was killed by Squanchy. Squanchy also appeared in his memory with Bird Person of the War when they fought together. But this time he's back for real. They make a bunch of jokes at his house too about how he needs an intervention just as bad as PB needs one. And pretty much everybody in the group is in dire need of an intervention. Like they're all meant to be just as bad as he is. There's a bunch of empty bottles strewn around the room. There's a giant bag of catnip and a giant dong-shaped bong. The whole joke during season 2, during his wedding, is that there were like a lot of dongs and a lot of balls in the background. So now when you rewatch those episodes, you won't be able to unsee that. When Rick sees him, he also jokes about saying that he wasn't dead. That's mostly a wink at the fans, like, see, Squanchy wasn't dead, we brought him back. They bring back Bird Person, whole this time. He's still voiced by Dan Harmon. The last we saw of him, Rick healed his body to its original state. Then he learned about his daughter, leaving to find her, who he's calling Bird Daughter. Basically his half-human daughter with Tammy. The house he's living in seems like the exact same one that he used to live in. He yells at her for being super lazy and leaving Gronflemite pieces all over the place. Apparently she's an assassin. He jokes about finding her in a femme fatale training camp. They might be creating all this backstory for the characters so that they can bring them back and turn it into a bigger thing in future seasons. Bird Person's joke about finding a sober person for their group is because, like I said, they're all meant to be just as lousy drunks as PB. They use it as an excuse to bring Gene back. Love the riding lawnmower joke too that they turn into the post-credit scene. Like, he won't let him stop it, which is another joke about being super selfish. Like Bird Person said, I want to show my daughter what real selfish people look like, when Rick is probably the most selfish person you could think of. RIP to that dude on the motorcycle. Then I couldn't think to any specific references for the FU name of the bar, the middle finger, but it's basically like the most aggressive, most toxic bar you could possibly think of. There's also what looks like a copyright safe sign in the background, which might be them calling out somebody in real life for trying to sue the show for like some logo that appeared in an episode, like, we dare you to sue us. Like they're giving the middle finger to somebody in real life, daring them to sue the show. And no, I do not think that they're giving Justin Roiland the middle finger, because they would have done this episode long before they actually had to fire him off the show. PB has apparently been stalking his wife, who's been seeing her Pilates instructor for a little while before she winds up seeing the Predator. And apparently now Predators are canon to the Rick and Morty universe. He hires one to track his wife. They make a joke about his old website from 2001. That might be a joke about all the time between Predator movies. Like the Predator was out of work after Predator 2 in the early 90s and didn't work again to the next Predator movie in 2004. They wind up turning into a much bigger joke later where he falls in love with his wife and starts a relationship and becomes his wife's new family, basically. That's actually the plot of some tropey movies. The bartender makes a Gilligan's Island reference because Gene does look kind of like the Gilligan character. He says PB looks like an eraser because he kind of looks like an eraser, and basically proceeds to make fun of him, calling out all the terrible things that have happened to him without realizing that he's telling the truth. PB uses the lie about his birthday to prove that they're not really his best friends because they all forgot. Love the scene of them all remembering, like, wait a minute, it was your birthday? Oh, crap. To be fair, it was not his actual birthday, so they shouldn't be slighted for not remembering that. Then they go on a big hangover-style bender, like a big montage. They travel to a bottle-themed universe. Basically, they're drinking their blood here, so RIP to all these cans and bottles. They wind up drinking what looks like some of Gene's piss, and then they go to a honey rave and basically do a parody of the opening scene of the Blade movie with all the bees, giving us a giant Hugh Jackman cameo scene, and it's actually Hugh Jackman doing the voice, even though it doesn't sound exactly like him, but Hugh Jackman has done voiceover roles before. There's actually a Hugh Jackman, Rick and Morty connection that predates this. So Hugh Jackman just starred in an animated show called Koala Man that was created by Michael Cusack. He's the person who did Bushworld Adventures, the parody version of Rick and Morty.
Morty, we're gonna go get me cube. We've gotta go to Bendigo to get me green cube.
So apparently actor Hugh Jackman is now canon to the Rick and Morty universe, as are his X-Men movies, all the other movies he's done. They make a reference to Rick hosting the Oscars, which he did recently. They make a bunch of Wolverine jokes, basically making fun of all of his movies. And apparently Gene is now related to Hugh Jackman through Hugh Jackman's former wife, now former, when they recorded the episode they were still married, but Deborah Lee Furness used to be his wife and was Gene's cousin. In fact, now, because of what happened with Hugh Jackman in real life getting divorced from his wife or about to get divorced, it's a little bit more relevant the way his character acts during this when they're talking about PB and his wife's relationship. Generally, his character is all over the map. Like, sometimes he's a super big butthole who's super selfish, and sometimes he says really sincere things. So, like, he's all over the spectrum in the episode, like super over-the-top ridiculous Hugh Jackman. They make a joke about him calling his dumps huge Ackmans because Ackmans, apparently in the universe of Rick and Morty, are Australian slang for dumps. The obvious joke is that it's a play on his name, basically calling himself a piece of crap. And apparently in this universe, he is a total party monster, making them take a bunch of mystery pills that cause them to hallucinate, like Rick's fingers sing in the Les Mis style, the way that Hugh Jackman also does when he returns. At his house, they have a bunch of parody movie posters of all the X-Men, Wolverine stuff, all of his Les Mis stuff. The X-Men poster is called Jackman, and it is basically Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but as all the different characters. I think this is meant to be a meta commentary on how the popularity of his Wolverine character kind of took over all the X-Men movies at a certain point. Like all the movie posters, even the Les Mis poster has him as Cosette on the cover, so it's meant to be like super, like making it all about himself. There's pictures of him and his former wife. I don't think they'd gotten divorced when they actually recorded the episode. Him with The Rock. There's a bunch of awards that he's won. There's even a golden pair of Wolverine claws. He's got a giant naked poster of himself with the Wolverine claws, but here's the thing. It looks like the Wolverine claws are actually in his hand, like he actually has Wolverine claws and was just walking around naked one day, like he doesn't have the Wolverine haircut, so this is just like him on a normal day, and he actually has Wolverine claws. They start a big running gag with Billy Ocean's Caribbean Queen song, saying that Hugh Jackman tells that he actually wrote the song originally, and it's actually on his Grammy Award for age 16. The joke there is that Hugh Jackman was 16 in 1984. That's the year that Caribbean Queen was published. When he calls Rick an energy vampire, they actually have one of those on What We Do in the Shadows. He basically sucks people's energy. Hugh Jackman makes a joke about Wolverining, and when they say that it hurts every time, that's a reference to the Wolverine movies, because Wolverine, every time he pops his claws, it basically hurts really bad, because when the claws come out, they have to push through his muscle and his skin, and then it has to heal when he retracts the claws, so like every time he pops them, he cuts himself. They go to his ex-wife's house, and Hugh Jackman actually sings Caribbean Queen in a parody of Say Anything, the John Cusack movie. And apparently she's been getting freaky with her predator PI, which I think they've used that twist in a couple actual movies. He kidnaps his son, they do a bigger parody of the first Predator movie with them covering themselves in mud to hide from him, and do a big fight that basically goes down the way the fights in the first Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger go down. Couple stray really funny moments during the actual fight, like he rips off Gearhead's nuts and stuffs them in his mouth. The Predator taking his armor and weapons off is a twist from the first Predator movie. PB's Season 4 Episode 3 reference was when they showed his fighting abilities, where he actually ended up getting fired from that professor job, and it's also an example of him breaking the fifth wall like Rick does every once in a while. Basically someone referencing that they know they're a character in a fictional TV show. That's like another level beyond just addressing the audience breaking the fourth wall. Then they reveal that the Predator is now like in a family relationship, like his son thinks of the Predator as his father. The musket joke is from the end of Predator 2. Then PB makes peace with his wife and is basically ready to move on with his life until Hugh Jackman comes back and almost kills, kind of seems like he killed the Predator. And if it wasn't clear, Dan Harmon was also doing the voice of the Predator.
Because I must, but man possesses a precious gift.
Who actually seems like a pretty chill dude. RIP if he did wind up dying. They steal a car, go to a version of Taco Bell. Apparently Taco Bell didn't want to pay Rick and Morty any money, so that's probably why they didn't use actual Taco Bell. Everybody goes their separate ways, but they do like a funny end credit scene voiceover where PB basically narrates things from the distant future about everybody's adventures after this moment. Bird Person makes a joke about the canon of the show, like meeting you here seemed canonical. He goes off to save his daughter who's at a Federation compound. Like I said, they might be trying to set them up for a bigger storyline in future seasons, like that's why they created so much new backstory for this daughter. The show also calls out itself for making too many Hugh Jackman Wolverine jokes, saying that Hugh Jackman went off to try and prevent future Wolverine jokes from happening, saying that they basically ruined it with all the references on this show. Like never again. Hugh Jackman is never going to do something like that again. Probably is also going off in-universe to make Deadpool 3, like Deadpool is also probably canon to the universe of Rick and Morty if the X-Men movies are canon. All the fade-out transitions, though, are a trope of a lot of classic TV shows, but then Rick tries to over-explain, like he did earlier in the episode, explain the logic behind Ghost, explain the logic behind the fade-outs as if it's an actual pill. Like, see, I had to take this pill to fade back in, and I'm going to take another one to fade back out. PB then fading out, saying that it felt like he was basically being burned alive. Then in the post-credit scene, they pay off the joke about Gene's riding mower still running, like it won't stop, and it's destroyed an entire town, but it's just about to run out of gas. Like nobody has bothered to just get out of its way. I think the cop is meant to be a reference to Sam Elliott, like he looks just like Sam Elliott. He also has a bunch of medallions, like one of them is the world's most superstitious person, making a joke about how he basically let himself get run over instead of moving out of the way, because it literally runs out of gas the minute that it hits him. Then, like I said, important to note, during the Vanity end credits cards, Justin Roiland's name is still there. Like, he's still getting paid his creator credit for actually co-creating the show with Dan Harmon. But I think Dan Harmon's Vanity card has been the same for a couple of seasons now. This is him and his fiancée and his dogs in real life. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references. If there are any in the episode that you spotted and I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. My only real criticism of the show is they didn't need to lean so hard on the over-the-top Hugh Jackman of it all. Like, it's fun to have celebrity cameos, but the cameos are usually better when they're playing new characters, not actually playing over-the-top versions of themselves. But it was cool that Hugh Jackman came to do the show. My episode 2 video will post next week after they release it. Another big reminder, Invincible Season 2 episodes will start really soon. I'll be doing weekly episode videos for that. It is probably one of the best new animated shows. Click here for my new Invincible Season 2 trailer video and Easter eggs, and click here for all my Rick and Morty episodes. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.